Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That pull you felt when you saw this, that wasn't curiosity, that was a summons. Archangel Michael has been dispatched, and God is calling you right now. Not tomorrow, not after you get yourself together. Right now, exactly as you are. The enemy has been working overtime against you this week for one reason and one reason only. He knew this call was coming. He knew that if you heard this message, everything he has been building against you collapses today. And it all ends today. The silence, the confusion, the feeling that heaven has gone quiet on you. But here is what you need to understand: it is not ending because of coincidence. It is ending because of what you have already done in the Spirit, even when you did not know you were doing it. Think back to that moment this week when you almost talked yourself out of something. Maybe you almost sent a message you should not have sent. Maybe you almost made a decision rooted in desperation instead of faith. But something stopped you. You pulled back. You went quiet. You waited. You did not know it then. But that restraint was not weakness, that was obedience, and heaven recorded it. You did not find this recording by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. Archangel Michael did. This is a divine appointment, ordered from the throne room, scheduled before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are standing at a threshold that does not open twice. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to deliver the exact order that God has released over your life in this season. I am going to expose the specific lie the enemy planted in your mind to make you believe God had stopped speaking to you. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that activates your response to this divine call and seals the enemy's assignment against your voice permanently shut. Do not click away. Your future self is on the other side of this message. If you leave now, you walk away from the open door right before you step through it. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere around you has not just been quiet. It has been thick, heavy, in a way that is hard to explain. Like something is pressing in from every direction and you cannot locate the source. Maybe you have been going through the motions this week, handling responsibilities, speaking to people, moving through your days, but feeling like there is a glass wall between you and everything else. Like you are present but disconnected. Like you have been waiting for something without knowing what you are waiting for. Or maybe it came on suddenly. Maybe you were in the middle of a completely ordinary moment, washing dishes, driving to work, lying in bed before sleep, and out of nowhere this wave of urgency came over you. This feeling that something is about to shift, that something is required of you, and you could not explain it to anyone around you. You feel like you are standing in a hallway between two doors. The old life is behind you and will not fully close. The new life is ahead of you and has not fully opened. And in that hallway, the enemy has been very loud. He has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your own thoughts this week and you will recognize it. He has been telling you that God has gone quiet because you have done something to disqualify yourself from this call. He is replaying a moment in your mind. Maybe that moment when you lost your patience. That moment when you chose your flesh over your faith. That moment when you doubted out loud. When you said words you cannot take back. When you questioned whether any of this was real. The accuser is holding that moment up and saying, "This is why he stopped speaking to you. This is why the call has not come. You missed it. You delayed it. You broke something that cannot be repaired. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment." Romans 11:29 says, "The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." Listen to that verdict. Irrevocable. Not conditional on your perfect performance. Not cancelled by your worst week. Not delayed by your moment of doubt. The call on your life was placed there before you were born, and it does not expire because of what happened last Tuesday. The enemy cannot repeal what God has already sealed. You are not disqualified. You are being summoned. The heaviness you feel is not the silence of an absent God. It is the weight of His presence moving closer. It is the pressure that comes right before a door opens. What you have been interpreting as distance is actually proximity. What you thought was abandonment is actually assignment. That moment you thought ruined everything, the moment you pulled back, went quiet, waited instead of forcing, that was not failure. That was the exact posture God needed from you to release this order through Michael. You did not miss your calling. You positioned yourself to receive it. Hit the like button if you feel this message reached you at exactly the right moment. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is one thing this week where you felt God going silent, and now you are wondering if that silence was actually Him drawing you closer? Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now, let's go deeper into what's really happening. Most people who feel this pull this weight in their chest, this sense that something is shifting. They try to explain it away. They call it anxiety. They call it overthinking. They say they're tired or stressed or just having a rough season. And maybe some of that is true. But here's what they don't tell you. When heaven is trying to reach you, it doesn't always come through thunder and lightning. Sometimes it comes through restlessness, through the inability to settle, through a knowing so deep it lives beneath your words, somewhere in the marrow of who you are. That is not a crisis. That is a summons. Imagine a mighty oak tree sensing the approaching storm, not with panic, but with a deep-rooted awareness, drawing its strength inward, preparing for what is to come. This internal stirring, this profound disquiet, is not a sign of weakness, but a divine signal, a celestial whisper urging you to attention. It's the echo of a call so ancient, so fundamental to your being, that it resonates in the very core of your soul. It's the universe beckoning, saying, it is time to awaken. And what's being exposed right now is the very reason most people never answer it. There is a lie that has been operating in your life so long, it stopped feeling like a lie. It started feeling like reality, like fact, like just the way things are. The lie sounds different for each person, but at its root, it says the same thing. You are ordinary. You are too broken. What happened to you disqualified you. The years you lost, the people who left, the prayers that seemed to go unanswered, all of it somehow became evidence in a case built against your own destiny. And without realizing it, you became your own prosecutor. You started agreeing with the verdict before the trial was ever finished. This insidious narrative, like a fog that settles so deeply it begins to look like the landscape itself, obscures your true vision. It whispers insidious doubts, painting your past failures and perceived shortcomings not as stepping stones, but as insurmountable walls. It crafts a false identity, an identity of limitation, convincing you that the very experiences that were meant to refine you have instead rendered you unfit for the grand tapestry of your divine purpose. You've become so accustomed to this self-condemnation that it feels like an objective truth, a verdict handed down by an unassailable judge, when in reality the judge, the jury, and the prosecution are all a construct of the lie itself. Think about Moses. Here was a man chosen before he could choose himself, marked by heaven, hidden in the water, raised in a palace that was never meant to be his permanent home. And yet when the moment came, when the burning bush blazed and the voice of the Most High called his name, Moses did not leap forward, he argued. He said, "Who am I?" He listed his limitations. He pointed to his past, to his speech, to every reason why God must have the wrong person. And the heartbreaking thing is Moses wasn't being humble. He was being deceived. He had spent 40 years in the wilderness convincing himself that the fire that once burned in him had gone out permanently. But God was standing in front of a burning bush to tell him, fire that is meant to burn does not go out. It waits. Moses, a man destined to lead a nation out of bondage, stood before the very source of his calling and saw only his own perceived inadequacies. His stammering tongue, his exile, his moments of doubt. These became the chains he forged for himself, binding him to the wilderness of his own mind. He mistook his time of preparation for a season of permanent obsolescence. But the divine blaze of the burning bush was not a condemnation of his past, but a revelation of his future, a testament to the enduring flame within him that even 40 years of self-imposed obscurity could not extinguish. God was not presenting a new candidate. He was reminding Moses of the one he had already chosen, the one whose fire was merely waiting for the right wind to reignite. You have been waiting, but so has he. And here's where it goes deeper, because it's not just the lie you've believed, it's what the lie built around you while you weren't looking. Every time you pulled back from an opportunity because you didn't feel ready, the walls got higher. Every time you silenced yourself in a room where you were supposed to speak, the ceiling got lower. Every time you told yourself next year, next season, when things calmed down, you were not being patient, you were being contained. There is a difference between divine waiting and self-imposed exile, and most people living in the second one believe they're in the first. Divine waiting produces preparation. Self-imposed exile produces paralysis. And if you're honest with yourself right now, you know which one you've been living in. This containment is a subtle prison, constructed brick by brick from your own hesitations and justifications. Each unseized moment, each silenced truth, becomes another bar on the cage of your potential. The lie convinces you that this cage is for your protection, that the cramped space is a sanctuary. But divine waiting is an active process, a period of fertile growth beneath the soil, a sharpening of tools, a deepening of wisdom, while self-imposed exile is a barren wasteland where dreams wither and courage erodes. It's the difference between a gardener tending a seed, knowing the bloom will come in its time, and a prisoner pacing the confines of a cell, convinced the world outside has forgotten them. But stay with me, because what's coming next is the part that breaks the cycle, and most people aren't ready for it when it arrives. The transition out of that exile doesn't begin with action. It begins with something far more uncomfortable. It begins with grief. You have to mourn the version of yourself that accepted less than what heaven designed for you. You have to sit with the weight of the years, the silences, the moments you shrunk yourself to fit into spaces that were always too small for what you carried. Not to condemn yourself, but to finally acknowledge what was real. Because you cannot release what you have never named, and you cannot step into who you are becoming while you are still protecting who you pretended to be. This is not about dwelling in sadness, but about a profound act of truth-telling. It is a sacred excavation, unearthing the buried parts of your spirit, acknowledging the cost of self-betrayal. It's like a sculptor looking at a block of marble that has been chipped away incorrectly, not to lament the flawed form, but to understand its limitations so they can begin to carve anew. This grief is the necessary precursor to liberation, the shedding of old skins that are too tight to allow for new growth. It is the honest appraisal of where you have been, not to remain there, but to gain the wisdom needed to move forward with intentionality. David understood this. Before he ever stood before Goliath, he sat in fields where no one was watching, writing songs in the dark, weeping in ways a king wasn't supposed to weep. The Psalms were not poetry, they were confessions. They were a man choosing to be honest with God about rage and doubt and abandonment and longing, because he knew that the moment he stopped being honest, he stopped being reachable. Your transparency before God is not weakness. It is the very frequency heaven uses to locate you. David's secret moments of vulnerability in the fields were not a sign of his unreadiness, but the very foundation of his strength. In those unobserved hours, amidst the quiet echoes of his soul, he wrestled with his deepest fears and hungers, laying bare his unvarnished heart before the divine. The Psalms are a testament to this profound intimacy, a raw and unfiltered communion where the lion slayer wept and raged, not in shame, but in a radical act of self-surrender. This honest expression, this willingness to be fully seen in his brokenness, was precisely what made him so profoundly reachable by the power of God, tuning him into the very broadcast signal of heaven. And this is where something begins to shift, because once you allow yourself to be found in your honesty, the next thing that has to happen is harder than the grieving. You have to revoke access. There are voices that have been speaking into your life that were never authorized to be there. Some of them belong to people you love. Some of them belong to versions of yourself that formed in survival mode, voices that kept you safe once, but have been keeping you small ever since. These voices don't always sound dangerous. They sound reasonable. They sound like wisdom. They say things like, "Be realistic," or "Who do you think you are?" or "You've tried before and look what happened." They dress fear in the language of caution, and they have been so effective that you started calling their counsel discernment. Real discernment does not shrink you. Real discernment protects the assignment while challenging the ego. It tells you to wait when waiting is preparation. It tells you to move when hesitation is fear. Counterfeit discernment does the opposite. It justifies staying still when God is saying rise. And until you learn to tell the difference, you will keep mistaking your prison for your sanctuary. Discerning the authentic from the counterfeit is a sacred art, a spiritual compass that guides you through the noise. True discernment is like a finely tuned instrument, vibrating with the frequency of divine truth, expanding your capacity and clarifying your path. It aligns with your divine assignment, even when it calls you into uncomfortable growth. False discernment, however, is a siren song, a seductive whisper of limitation that masquerades as prudence, ensnaring you in a web of fear disguised as wisdom. It cloaks inertia in the guise of caution, keeping you tethered to the familiar when the call is to venture into the unknown. Learning to distinguish these voices is paramount to breaking free from the self-made sanctuary that has become your spiritual prison. In just a moment, we'll uncover what's been hidden in plain sight, the thing that's been feeding your delay from a place you never thought to look. Because here's what most people don't realize. The enemy is not always outside of you. The warfare is not always coming from other people, from circumstances, from doors that won't open. Sometimes the deepest warfare is happening in the narrative you keep rehearsing in private. The story you tell yourself about who you are, about what's possible, about whether God really meant what he said when he said it about you. Every morning you wake up and choose that story over the one heaven wrote. You are not a victim of spiritual attack. You are participating in it. That is not condemnation. That is an invitation to understand your own power. The battleground of your mind is often the most fiercely contested territory. The enemy's most potent weapon is not external opposition, but the internalized narrative that undermines your divine identity. When you wake each day and consciously or unconsciously choose to believe the story of your limitations, your past failures, and your unworthiness, you are actively collaborating with the forces that seek to keep you small. This isn't an accusation of complicity, but a profound revelation of your agency. It is an awakening to the fact that the stories you tell yourself hold immense power, and by choosing the narrative heaven has written for you, a narrative of purpose, potential, and divine favor. You become an active participant in your own liberation. Because here's the confrontation you need to receive today. You are not powerless. You have never been powerless. The very fact that the adversary has spent years building a case against your identity tells you exactly how dangerous your destiny is. Ordinary people are not pursued like this. Ordinary lives do not attract this level of opposition. The warfare around your mind, your relationships, your body, your finances, it is not random, it is targeted. And targeted things are tracked, and only things that matter get tracked. If nothing about you was significant, you would have been left alone a long time ago. Consider the intense scrutiny placed upon a priceless artifact. It is not the common clay that draws such vigilance, but the treasure it holds. The relentless opposition, the internal battles, the external challenges you face. These are not random acts of misfortune. They are markers of your profound significance. The adversary's investment of energy in undermining your identity is a testament to the world-altering potential of your destiny. Your life, your purpose, is so inherently valuable, so inherently dangerous to the forces of darkness, that it warrants this level of focused resistance. You are not a pawn. You are a pivotal player whose presence shifts the very landscape of the spiritual realm. But here's the part you probably didn't expect. The thing that has truly been blocking you is not the enemy's power over your life. It is your discomfort with your own greatness. You have been taught, subtly, quietly, over years of disappointment and religion and well-meaning people, that wanting more is prideful, that expecting God to move on your behalf is presumptuous, that staying low is spiritual. And so you have been blocking your own elevation in the name of humility, when what heaven has been waiting for is your willingness to agree with what it already declared. Humility is not the denial of your calling. Humility is the full surrender to it, even when it terrifies you, even when it costs you comfort, even when it means standing in rooms that feel too large for where you've been. True humility is not self-effacement. It is the radical surrender of your will to God's purpose, even when that purpose feels impossibly grand. For years, you've been conditioned to believe that aspirations of greatness are rooted in pride, that faith requires a meek acceptance of mediocrity. This counterfeit humility has become a self-imposed barrier, a shield you wield against your own destiny. But the God who orchestrates galaxies does not demand that you shrink yourself. He calls you to embrace the magnificent truth of who you are, to step into the fullness of His design, even when it feels daunting. Humility, in its purest form, is the courageous alignment with your divine blueprint, acknowledging its vastness and trusting the one who inscribed it. You were not called to fit. You were called to transform the room you walk into. And this final layer, this is where everything breaks open. The delay you've been living in was not punishment. It was not rejection. It was construction. Every prayer that seemed unanswered was being absorbed. Every moment of waiting was a foundation being laid beneath a building you couldn't see yet. God does not waste preparation. He does not allow suffering without intention. And what He has been building in you during the silence is not a version of you that barely survived. It is a version of you that can carry what's coming without being destroyed by it. The weight of your destiny required a depth in your roots that comfort could never have produced. The wilderness produced it. The rejection produced it. The nights you cried and heard nothing, those produced it. The seasons of delay were not barren voids, but sacred workshops where God meticulously forged your resilience. Each unanswered prayer was not a sign of neglect, but a deposit of spiritual strength. Each quiet moment was not an emptiness, but the silent, powerful work of establishing deep, unshakable roots. The refiner's fire of hardship, the pruning of rejection, the deep solitude of unanswered pleas. These were not punishments, but the essential elements in the creation of a vessel strong enough to contain the immense glory of your calling. You are not a survivor. You are being meticulously crafted to carry and to radiate the divine purpose for which you were uniquely designed. You are not behind. You are ready. Place your hand on your heart and declare this with me now. I release every label that was placed on me by people who could not see what heaven sees. I revoke every agreement I made with limitation, with fear, with smallness. I grieve what was lost, and I release the weight of what I was never meant to carry. I am not disqualified by my past. I am prepared by it. I open my spirit to receive what God has already released in my name. I step forward, not because I have no more fear, but because my calling is greater than my fear. I am chosen. I am being activated. I am exactly where I need to be, and I will not retreat from what heaven is inviting me into. The wait is over. The season has shifted, and I walk forward now in faith, in clarity, and in the full authority of everything God placed inside me before I was born. If this message confirmed what your spirit has been carrying, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me what is the one thing you are ready to release. Your words have power. Use them. And I'll see you in the next message.